This is an excerpt from a Platonic dialogue called the Symposium. It's a discussion of the nature of love, involving a number of fun and interesting features. But today we're going to focus on the speech that Diotima gives. And at the end of her speech, she's going to ask two questions, or one question, which I'd like you to try and answer. The question she asks is, would that be an ignoble life? Meaning, is what she is describing, would that be a bad life? I want you to answer if you think it would be a bad life, the life that she's describing, and also try and answer perhaps a harder question, just what in the world is she talking about anyways? Try and pay attention. This is at a real college reading level, and I'm reading it for you so that way you can listen to it and read along and try and determine just what exactly is going on here. Let's begin. What then is love? Socrates asked. Is he mortal? No. What then? As in the former instance, he is neither mortal nor immortal, but in a mean between the two. What is he, Diotima? He is a great spirit, or daimon, and like all spirits, he is intermediate between the divine and the mortal. And what, Socrates said, is his power? He interprets, she replied, between gods and men, conveying and taking across to the gods the prayers and sacrifices of men, and to men the commands and replies of the gods. He is the mediator who spans the chasm which divides them, and therefore in him all is bound together, and through him the arts of the prophet and the priest, their sacrifices and mysteries and charms, and all prophecy and incantation find their way. For God mingles not with man but through love. All the intercourse and converse of God with man, whether awake or asleep, is carried on. The truth of the matter is this: no God is a philosopher or seeker after wisdom, for he is wise already. Nor does any man who is wise seek after wisdom. Neither do the ignorant seek after wisdom. For herein is the evil of ignorance, that he who is neither wise nor good is nevertheless satisfied with himself. He has no desire for that of which he feels no want. But who then, Diotima? Socrates asked. Who then are the lovers of wisdom, if they are neither the wise nor the foolish? A child may answer that question, she replied. They are those who are in a mean or a middle ground between the two, and love is one of them. For wisdom is a most beautiful thing, and love is of the beautiful. And therefore love is also a philosopher, or lover of wisdom, and being a lover of wisdom is in a mean or a middle ground between the wise and the ignorant. Socrates said, O thou stranger woman, thou sayest well. But assuming love to be such as you say, what is the use of him to men? That, Socrates, she replied, I will attempt to unfold. Of his nature and birth I have already spoken, and you acknowledge that love is of the beautiful. But someone will say, of the beautiful in what, Socrates and Diotima? Or rather, let me put the question more dearly and ask, when a man loves the beautiful, what does he desire? Socrates answered her, that the beautiful may be his. Still, she said, the answer suggests a further question. What is given by the possession of beauty? To what you have asked, Socrates replied, I have no answer ready. Then she said, let me put the word good in the place of the beautiful, and repeat the question once more. If he who loves the good, what is it then that he loves? The possession of the good, Socrates said. And what does he gain who possesses the good? Happiness, Socrates replied. There is less difficulty in answering that question. Yes, she said, the happy are made happy by the acquisition of good things, nor is there any need to ask why a man desires happiness. The answer is already final. You are right, Socrates said. And is this wish and this desire common to all? And do all men always desire their own good, or only some men? What say you? All men, Socrates replied. The desire is common to all. Why then, she rejoined, are not all men, Socrates, said to love, but only some of them, whereas you say that all men are always loving the same things? I myself wonder, Socrates said, why this is. What are they doing who show all this eagerness and heat which is called love? And what is the object which they have in view? Answer me. Nay, Diotima, Socrates replied, if I had known, I should not have wondered at your wisdom, neither should I have come to learn from you about this very matter. Well, she said, I will teach you. The object which they have in view is birth in beauty, whether of body or soul. I do not understand you, Socrates said. This oracle requires an explanation. I will make my meaning clearer, she replied. I mean to say that all men are bringing to the birth in their bodies and in their souls. There is a certain age at which human nature is desirous of procreation which must be in beauty and not in deformity. And this procreation is the union of man and woman, and is a divine thing. For conception and generation are an immortal principle in the mortal creature, and in the inharmonious they can never be. But the deformed is always inharmonious with the divine, and the beautiful harmonious. Beauty, then, is the destiny or goddess of parturition who presides at birth, and therefore, when approaching beauty, the conceiving power is propitious and diffusive and benign, and begets and bears fruit, and at the sight of ugliness she frowns and contracts and has a sense of pain, and turns away and shrivels up, and not without a pang refrains from conception. And this is the reason why, when the hour of conception arrives, and the teeming nature is full, there is such a flutter and ecstasy about beauty, whose approach is the alleviation of the pain of travail. For love, Socrates, is not, as you imagine, the love of the beautiful only. What then? The love of generation and of birth in beauty. Yes, Socrates said. Yes, indeed, she replied. But why of generation? Because to the mortal creature, generation is a sort of eternity and immortality, she replied. And if, as has already been admitted, love is of the everlasting possession of the good, all men will necessarily desire immortality together with good, wherefore love is of immortality. Marvel not then, she said, if you believe that love is of the immortal, as we have several times acknowledged. For here again, and on the same principle too, the mortal nature is seeking as far as is possible to be everlasting and immortal. And this is only to be attained by generation, because generation always leaves behind a new existence in the place of the old. Nay, even in the life of the same individual there is succession and not absolute unity. A man is called the same, and yet in the short interval which elapses between youth and age, and in which every animal is said to have life and identity, he is undergoing a perpetual process of loss and reparation. Hair, flesh, bones, blood, and the whole body are always changing, which is true not only of the body but also of the soul, whose habits, tempers, opinions, desires, pleasures, pains, fears never remain the same in any one of us, but are always coming and going. And equally true of knowledge. And what is still more surprising to us mortals, not only do the sciences in general spring up and decay, so that in respect of them we are never the same, but each of them individually experiences a like change. For what is implied in the word recollection, but the departure of knowledge, which is ever being forgotten, and is renewed and preserved by recollection, and appears to be at the same time the same, although in reality new, according to that law of succession by which all mortal things are preserved, not absolutely the same, but by substitution, the old, worn-out mortality leaving another new and similar existence behind, unlike the divine, which is always the same and not another. And in this way, Socrates, the mortal body, or mortal anything, partakes of immortality, but the immortal in another way. Marvel not then at the love which all men have of their offspring, for that universal love and interest is for the sake of immortality. Socrates was astonished at her words and said, Is this really true, O thou wise Diotima? And she answered with all the authority of an accomplished sophist. Of that, Socrates, you may be assured. Think only of the ambition of men, and you will wonder at the senselessness of their ways, unless you consider how they are stirred by the love of an immortality of fame. They are ready to run all risks greater far than they would have for their children, and to spend money and undergo any sort of toil, and even to die for the sake of leaving behind them a name which shall be eternal. Did you imagine that Alcestis would have died to save Admetus, or Achilles to avenge Patroclus, or your own Codrus in order to preserve the kingdom for his sons, if they had not imagined that the memory of their virtues, which still survives among us, would be immortal? Nay, she said, I am persuaded that all men do all things, and the better they are, the more they do them, in the hope of the glorious fame of immortal virtue, for they desire the immortal. And the true order of going, or being led by another to the things of love, is to begin from the beauties of the earth and to mount upwards for the sake of that other beauty, using these as steps only, and from one going on to two, and from two to all fair forms, and from fair forms to fair practices, and from fair practices to fair notions, until from fair notions he arrives at the notion of absolute beauty, and at last knows what the essence of beauty is. This, my dear Socrates, said the stranger of Mantinea, is that life above all others which man should live in the contemplation of beauty absolute, a beauty which, if you once beheld, you would see not to be after the measure of gold and garments and fair boys and youths whose presence now entrances you, and you and many a one would be content to live seeing them only and conversing with them without meat or drink, if that were possible. You only want to look at them and to be with them. But what if man had eyes to see the true beauty, the divine beauty, I mean pure and dear and unalloyed, not clogged with the pollutions of mortality and all the colors and vanities of human life, thither looking and holding converse with the true beauty, simple and divine? Remember how in that communion only, beholding beauty with the eye of the mind, will he be enabled to bring forth not images of beauty but realities, for he has hold not of an image but of a reality, and bringing forth and nourishing true virtue to become the friend of God and be immortal if mortal man may. Would that be an ignoble life? And so, class, I asked you, would that be an ignoble life? And just what is she talking about anyways? I'll leave you to figure that out.